This show is brought to you by the All Pro Nation Radio Network. Be sure to like and subscribe and check us out online at allpronation.com, where fans have a voice.
All right, what is up, All Pro Nation family? You are tuned in to the All Pro Nation podcast live right here on the All Pro Nation Radio Network. I'm your host, Chris Smith, joined as always by my buddy Tanner Weber. Tanner, how you doing, man?
I am good, Chris. Guess what?
What?
For the second time in a month and a half, it rained in Arizona today.
Dude, how is that hot
A
weather?
lot. It's not bad, actually.
It rained pretty bad here too today.
I didn't think it ever rained in Arizona, but sure enough.
So every now and then the desert does get a little rain, huh?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's exciting. I know. I wonder if the All Pro Nation fans actually give two craps about the weather where
I
live.
live.
But we talk about it at the start of every podcast.
Not a chance.
It's
interesting to me. I'm a big weather guy.
It just kind of has become our thing. We always talk about the weather before we start football. It's very weird.
That's right.
Man, I hope everybody enjoyed your 4th of July holiday. I'm sure you could tell that the podcast last week was pre-recorded. Oh, excuse me. Was pre-recorded, but we had to take a little time off to spend time with our friends and family as we celebrated the birth of our amazing country. So hope you all had a wonderful 4th of July. And we're ready to talk some more football this week.
Let's do it.
And look,
NFC North.
NFC North. I was about to say, I know we have a pretty high concentration of Vikings fans that listen to the podcast, so I know this is going to be a popular podcast. So we're going to try not to let you down. We're going to try to keep this fun, energetic, and whatnot, so you guys will enjoy listening to it. We do have a special guest joining us a little bit later. His name is Matthew Collar. You probably are aware if you live in the Minnesota area. He is with
ESPN 1500.
So y'all are going to enjoy that little interview as we do a lot of Vikings talk and break down the NFC North. As always, me and Tanner are going to do it, so let's jump in. Tanner, NFC North, you ready?
Are you sure you want to talk about the NFC North, Chris? Are you going to have a lot of bashful words for us this week?
You know what, dude? What happened in January is gone. I've forgotten about it. And we're just moving on to the next year because it's black and gold to the Super Bowl this year, baby. So you can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, so let me ask you, Tanner. Obviously, your Vikings won the NFC North last year. Do you think that the big purple team is going to do it again?
All right, so everybody that listens to this on a regular basis knows that I'm a big Vikings fan, but I am going to try and be as not biased as I can. I try to be a realist on here. I do think if they stay healthy, they will win the division again this year, but that's saying if they can stay healthy. They were blessed with a good amount of success in that department last year. The offensive line stayed healthy till all the way up about to week 16 or so until Nick Easton went down, and every star on the defense played almost all 16 games. I don't know that if they can do that or not again this year. We'll see what happens. Hopefully they can. But the Aaron Rodgers effect is going to have an impact on this division as long as he's playing in this league. We know that. He's back this year, and as long as he is playing for the Packers, there's a good chance they're going to win 10 games every single year. I honestly think it's a toss-up right now between the Packers and the Vikings for first and second place. I think both teams are going to win around 10 to 12 games. And the only reason I could say the Packers should beat the Vikings in this division is because I think that their schedule is a little bit more favorable. The Vikings got some really tough games early and often. They got to go to LA to play the Rams. They got to go to Philadelphia, to Green Bay in week 2, and they have to go to New England. So there's a lot of really tough road games this year for the Vikings. And the Packers do have their fair share of tough games as well, but I think it's a little bit more favorable than the Vikings is.
Yeah, right on. So you think that you do think the Vikings are going to win, but the one team that's going to give them a push is going to be the Packers. Where
Absolutely.
where do you see the Bears and the Lions kind of fitting in? What do you think about them?
The Bears are the up and coming team in the NFL right now, man. Let me tell you, they're gonna make a push this year. I think they're gonna be competitive. I haven't really taken an in-depth look at their schedule. I'll have to do that here when you start talking so I can dig through that. But I would say that they're probably going to win, 8 or 9 games.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be – yeah. I think they'll get third place. I think that they're better than the Lions. They have more talent than the Lions. And I think they'll end up in that third spot probably at 8-8. And the Lions really have a tough schedule again this year too. And the thing I don't understand with the Lions is every single offseason, I feel like they try so hard to keep putting pieces around Matthew Stafford on offense. They upgraded their offensive line again in the draft, but they literally didn't do anything except re-sign Ziggy Ansah on defense this year. How did they get better?
Right.
So if you can't stop anybody, you're not going to win games. So I got the Lions at like 7-9, 6-10.
Okay. All right. So my next question is going to be we can't ignore the $84 million question, right? It has to be addressed. Is he going to be worth it or is he not?
Kirk Cousins. I do think he is going to be worth it. Nobody likes to hear $84 million guaranteed, especially when it's coming from your own team. But I think if you're a Vikings fan, just stop, take a breath for a second, and breathe. We've had like 12 starting quarterbacks, I think, since Culpepper went down in 2005 or 2006, whatever year it was. Kirk Cousins, I think this is the direction that Rick Spielman wanted to go. Obviously, when we drafted Teddy Bridgewater, we were hoping that he was going to be the guy long term. That didn't happen. He had a knee injury. We moved on from that standpoint. We had some unassurances with Case Keenum. He had a terrific year last year, but is he a guy that can put that together year after year and throw for 25 touchdowns and 7 picks or whatever it is? Sam Bradford, walking corpse. You hit him, he's going to go to the ground, he's going to get hurt. There's no way he plays 16 games. So there's no stability in either of those 3 quarterbacks that we had on the roster last year. Kirk Cousins, I think, offers that stability that we can have going in 5 to 7 years down the road. And I think as long as he's here and Mike Zimmer's here on defense to put together a good team each and every year, I think we have a chance at the Super Bowl as long as Cousins shows up every week. And I think he'll do that. He's got a strong work ethic.
Yeah, you think it's going to be better than what he was able to do in Washington? About the same?
I think Washington had a better offensive line. I really like Morgan Moses, Trent Williams, and Brandon Scherf in Washington. He had a really good offensive line, but he did not have even close to the same amount of artillery as he does with Minnesota. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, Dalvin Cook, you name it. You got weapons left and right. There's no reason that he shouldn't succeed in Minnesota given health issues.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
All right, so you've mentioned his name, so going to ask you about him, Laquan Treadwell.
Oh, what do you want to ask me about him?
I mean, this has got to be it for him, huh?
I do think that this is probably a make or break year for him. He's in an unfortunate situation. I don't think anybody perceived that Adam Thielen was going to be a guy that stepped up 2 years ago and just took this team by storm. Undrafted free agent out of Minnesota, Mankato State. He's going to have to. I don't know what kind of numbers he's going to have to put up to keep him around. He's been in the league for 2 years already and hasn't caught a touchdown pass yet. So I don't know, maybe 40 receptions, 500 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think that would be good enough for the team to maybe extend him.
Yeah.
Maybe not extend him, but pick up his option to see what he has for year 5.
Okay. All right. So this is always the fun question since you're a big draft guy. If you're looking at the rookies in the NFC North, who could you see coming out as the NFC North Rookie of the Year?
A lot of the teams in the NFC North actually stuck with like defensive picks because obviously, you have to stop Aaron Rodgers. That's the top guy. Minnesota had a pretty good offense last year. So there wasn't a lot of offensive guys drafted, but I guess if I had to pick somebody, Anthony Miller, is probably going to be the popular pick for most people, the wide receiver out of Chicago. But I don't know how many targets he'll see in his first year with Allen Robinson already there. Kevin White's going to get another chance, and Taylor Gabriel's there now too. So I'm going to go with Jamon Moore. I guess I don't even know how you say his name. But the wide receiver out of Missouri got drafted to Green Bay. I think it was the 4th or 5th round. I think he has a good chance to be that wide receiver 3 in Green Bay behind Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb. I think he'll get a lot of targets from Aaron Rodgers, and I think he could put up some pretty big numbers in his rookie season.
Okay. All right. So defensive side of the ball.
Defense, I'm going with. I have to go with Roquan Smith. There's no other. There's a lot of players you could pick from on defense. Almost every team has a player that could be a representative except the Lions. But Roquan Smith is definitely top 10 pick. He really doesn't have any weaknesses. Linebacker for Chicago, I think, as long as he can stay healthy, I think he's definitely going to be a Rookie of the Year candidate in the NFL.
Okay, right on. All right, so let's go team by team, and let's think of who's going to be the breakout player from each team. So we'll start. Let's start with Detroit.
Are you playing too, or is this just me?
We're all on you, baby. All on you. This is your wheelhouse.
All right, the NFC North. I understand. Who are we starting with?
Let's start with Detroit. I'll do breakout player. You know me. The draft is your thing. You're the draft guru here.
Yeah. Okay. Breakout players. Each team. We're starting with the Lions. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Let's start with the Lions.
All right. Year 2 under in the Lions offense. Another season with Matthew Stafford. I like Kenny Galladay. Golden Tate obviously going to get a ton of targets in that offense. Marvin Jones is clearly wide receiver 1 or 2, whatever it is. But Kenny Galladay, I think, is going to receive a lot of targets again this year, and I like him to be a breakout player. And I think he's actually going to surprise some people in fantasy leagues.
Okay. I'm going on the defensive side of the ball, and I think this player had a super solid year last year, and I think he was one of the best defensive players in his draft, and I think he's just going to continue to build. I'm going with Ashawn Robinson.
Okay.
I think
they definitely need it. Their defensive line was not very good last year.
Yeah, they really him just right there up the middle, rushing the passer, stopping the run. I think that would be big for them. So that's who I'm going with, and maybe he can catch another fat man touchdown this year too. All right, so let's move on up to the Chicago Bears, and this one's
Chicago
easy for
Bears.
me.
Well, do you want to go first this time? I actually really struggled with this one. I didn't know who to pick.
Oh,
but I do have somebody.
I've got two really, but my main one, Mitchell Trubisky.
Okay.
I freaking love Mitchell Trubisky. I think he is a superstar in the making, and I think with some good coaching, and I think he's going to get it out of Matt Nagy.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see something special out of Trubisky this year.
Let me ask you this then. Okay, so you and I, we did our QB rankings in, I don't know, early May or something like that, and we both had him towards the bottom, 25 through 32, somewhere in that range. Where do you think he'll end up next year if you think he's going to be a breakout player?
Top 15.
Top 20? Top 15. Oh, my goodness. That's bold. Hot take. You got one every week. That's what I love about you.
Top 15.
Top 15, Mitch Trubisky. Okay. All right, I'm gonna hold that to you. That's something I got to tweet out. I feel like.
Yeah, you tweet out my hot takes every week. People don't even have a reason to listen.
That's because they're just like so dumbfounded by some of the stuff that you say.
What was the Dallas Cowboys hot take that you tweeted out that we got the bet on? I don't even remember.
Cowboys. You said that the Cowboys are going to finish last in the division this year.
Oh yeah, that's what I said.
And then you said if they make the playoffs that you were going to like buy a Dak Prescott jersey and take pictures and selfies and stuff in it.
I did.
It's going to be really funny.
I did.
That's awesome.
All right, so who's your breakout player?
I'm going with the newly acquired free agent signing, Aaron Lynch. He coming over from San Francisco. He's moving to a 3-4 outside linebacker, and I really like him across from Leonard Floyd. If I have this correct, I think he is going to spend most of his plays lined up behind Akeem Hicks. So he's going to see a lot of one-on-one matchups. So rest in peace to whoever has to guard him. I think he's going to have a big year.
Yeah. Akeem Hicks would be another one, but he had a big year last year, so I don't know if he really
he can't be classified as a breakout player. That's not a secret anymore.
Yeah. All right, so let's move over to the Green Bay Packers. This is where I had a tough one.
The Packers are a tough one, and I actually think that there's a lot of players that you could choose from on the Packers just because they have a pretty young team.
Are you gonna
go with
Kaiser?
Huh?
Are you going to choose Deshaun Kaiser?
No, thanks.
What about Mercedes Lewis?
Nah, he ain't going to see the field. When was the last time? I think you and I actually had this conversation once. When was the last time a Packers tight end was actually successful in Green Bay? And I know
Finley.
I think Jermichael Finley, but was he even successful? Would he catch maybe like 5 touchdowns a year?
I mean, I guess he was successful in their eyes.
So basically, tight ends, Green Bay is where tight ends go to die. That's basically how I look at it. So Jimmy Graham, Mercedes Lewis, probably just both going to be turds this year, which is completely fine with me.
All right.
But my pick.
Yeah, your pick.
What's that?
Yeah, go ahead. Your pick. Breakout player. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Chris?
Hey, there you are.
Shit.
All right.
All right. Where do we got to start off at?
All right. I'll start it. 3, 2, 1. All right, so let's move over to Green Bay. Who is going to be your breakout player over in Green Bay?
I'm going to go defense. There's a lot of players to choose from just because they have such a young team, but I'm going to go with Josh Jones. He didn't play a lot last year because Morgan Burnett, saw the majority of the time, but he's in Pittsburgh now. So a lot of stuff that I read in minicamp and heading into training camp is that Josh Jones he's been working really hard this offseason, and they're expecting a lot of him in year 2. So if I got to pick one player on the defense that's going to be classified as breakout, it'd probably be Josh Jones or a corner, but I like Josh Jones because I really liked him coming out of college.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. There's a couple players that need to break out. Obviously, they need Jair Alexander to be good. They need Josh Jackson to be good. They need Aaron Jones to be good. They need Jimmy Graham to be freaking phenomenal. So they need some breakout players in multiple positions. I know we have the theory about the tight ends in Green Bay not being successful, but is this the year that Jimmy Graham kind of has a bounce back season after being underutilized in Seattle?
Nope, not going to happen.
Well, here's another
Green Bay is where tight ends go to die.
Well, here's another hot take. Jimmy Graham resurrects his career as a breakout player.
Okay. Okay, Chris.
And let's go.
What does a breakout season look like for Jimmy Graham?
Well, I mean, no. because Jimmy Graham 1,000 yards a couple years ago when he was with the Saints, but he spent the last 5 years with Seattle where he did nothing. So I'm going Jimmy Graham as the breakout player. I'm saying he gets 750 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Pro Bowl? Pro Bowl?
Pro Bowl for sure.
And Pro Bowl. Okay. All right.
He's getting. I don't really put a whole lot of stock in the Pro Bowl because you get Pro Bowl. You get Pro Bowl just by name recognition.
True. Touche. He should get 8 touchdowns easy though in Rodgers' offense. No excuses for that. I actually feel like if he doesn't get 8 touchdowns with Rodgers at QB, that's considered a disappointing season.
You think?
I do.
I mean, he's 31 years old.
Yeah, dude, but he's a beast. Was he like 6'7"?
Yeah.
Athletic?
I mean, I don't know, man. You're putting way too much pressure on me right now. You nitpicking my breakout player, man.
I have to. He plays for the Packers.
I know. All right, let's move over to Minnesota before we lose our friendship. Breakout player.
Matthew will hit on this a little more, and it's just really tough to pick somebody because so many players on Minnesota's team are so solidified in their positions already. Mackenzie Alexander is somebody that I like to pick, but I feel like Mike Hughes is really just going to steal his show this year. So I'm going to go with the cliche pick that most Minnesota fans are expecting, Laquan Treadwell. If you go back and look at the tape from the past 2 seasons, he's only got like 23, 24 receptions or something like that, and only like 200 yards. No touchdowns. It is really disappointing, but if you go back and look at the tape, Case Keenum, Sam Bradford, they've missed him a lot. He's been wide open. He is a good route runner, and he can block. I think with Kirk Cousins at the helm, he'll see a lot more targets this year. I expect his numbers to go up, and I am hoping that he will be wide receiver 3 by the time the playoffs come. Kendall Wright is in Minnesota on a 1-year deal, and I'm hoping Laquan Treadwell can steal that from him. I think right now going in the training camp, he's probably wide receiver 4.
Okay. All right, so I'm going with.
It's tough, I told you.
Yeah, it really is because everybody's so good on this team. I think I'm gonna have to.
Pat Elfline, Team Elfline, # Team Elfline.
I think I'm gonna have to go with. Dalvin Cook.
You can. You only played 4 games last year, 3.5.
You look at the roster and it's like, okay, who's going to break out? They all had phenomenal seasons last year. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Anthony Barr, Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, Kyle Rudolph, Xavier Rhodes, Everson Griffin, Danielle Hunter. Like, we could just go through every single one of these players just had great years.
Mm-hmm.
Trey Waynes, like. You look at it and you're like, okay, I guess where they were the weakest was their running game. And they weren't even
in the league.
And they what's that? And they weren't even
7th in the NFL.
They weren't even bad there. I guess there's something to say with their, neither one of those running backs there anymore. Latavius Murray's still there. But you sit here and you look at it and it's like, who do you pick? I don't know. I guess it's got to be him.
It's tough.
It really is.
Tough. It's a tough call. I know. I understand.
Yeah, so.
But if you had to pick somebody, you pick Dalvin Cook. That's fine.
Yeah, I'll go Dalvin Cook for sure. All right. And so, all right, so you know the drill. How you think you see it shaking out?
I don't like doing this, especially in this division. And I don't want to sound like a homer, but I got to go with the Vikes. I think the Vikes are going to finish the division NFC champs again, 12-4. I think they should go undefeated at home this year. Right, Chris?
Mm-mm.
Play the Saints week 8 at home. Going to get another W.
They will not go undefeated at home this year.
I got the Vikes at 12-4. I got the Packers coming in right behind them at 11-5. I think the Packers will be a wild card heading into the playoffs, and as long as Rodgers is there, they're going to be dangerous. And then I got the Bears up and coming. I think they're going to have a few growing pains yet on offense. I could see an 8-8, 9-7 finish, and then I think the Lions are going to finish towards the bottom of the division at 6-10 or 7-9. Matt Patricia, new head coach coming in, some chemistry issues. It sounds like they're already having some problems going into training camp with leadership questionability. So we'll see how that team responds to that going into the season. But that's what I got right now. Vikings 1, Packers 2, Bears 3, Lions 4.
All right. Yeah, I'm going I'm with you. I do think the Vikings are going to win. I think they were a solid team last year that only got better. I don't think that this revamp of the Green Bay offense is going to do anything because they're revamping it with the same people that built it.
Revamping.
Yeah, they're revamping it with the same coach and offensive coordinator who started it 10 years ago. So there is no revamping of it. Joe Philbin, Mike McCarthy, no. So I think the Vikings stay. I don't think that the Packers are going to be as competitive as people do. I'm going Chicago at number 2, Packers number 3,
Oh my goodness.
and
That's really
Detroit
cool.
Lions number 4.
Let me ask you this from a fan that's not in the NFC North. What has to happen for Mike McCarthy to be on the hot seat?
I think he should be on the hot seat.
I feel like people.
Well, no.
Like, why,
I'll put it to
why
you
is he
this.
still there? I
Mike,
feel like he's not a good coach. That's just me.
No, he is a good coach. He's a good coach. He's not a good offensive coordinator.
You're not good at calling plays. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, he's a good like CEO of the team and managing the team and getting his players pumped up and for all intents and purposes his players like playing for him. Excuse me, but I just don't think he's a good offensive coordinator.
I'm just wondering what has to take place. I mean, is he going to be there as long as Rodgers is there? That's
Probably.
another 6-7 years maybe.
Probably.
We'll see, but that's probably for another pod.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think Minnesota, Detroit, or Minnesota, Chicago, Green Bay, Detroit.
Okay.
So, all right. So let's move on into weekly news, notes, and tidbits. What you got for us this week?
All right, lots of news this week. We're getting into training camp, so we do got a full workload. Jameis Winston has officially been suspended 3 games for his incident with the Uber driver. I don't think she ever pressed charges, but yeah, either way, he got suspended 3 games. Isn't that crazy how like a sexual assault's like 3 games, but if you smoke pot, it's like 4 games? Isn't that weird how that works? Yeah. Lots of suspensions. This is the time of the year the NFL hands out all their suspensions before the season comes in. This isn't for PEDs, but Eagles linebacker Nigel Bradham is suspended 1 game for punching a hotel worker last July. He punched a hotel worker, and he got a 1-game suspension. 1 game. 49ers linebacker Reuben Foster is suspended for the first 2 games of the 2018 season for violating the league's personal conduct policy. Packers running back Aaron Jones is suspended 2 games for using PEDs. Rams guard Jamone Brown is suspended 2 games for using PEDs. The Buccaneers cut guard J.R. Sweezy, who was actually just acquired like 2 years ago, I think, for a 5-year, $40-some million deal. It's crazy how he's on the market already. Browns tackle Donald Stevenson has been placed on the retired list. Okay, I actually don't have a whole lot of clarity on this next tidbit. Cam Chancellor, Seahawks safety, came out and wrote a big thing saying that he was going to retire, but I don't think he ever actually officially retired. So I'm actually not really sure.
Yeah, I think he's retiring.
Yeah, I mean, I think he will before the season starts, but he didn't actually officially retire yet, even though it looked like he was going to. Cardinals general manager had a good time on the 4th of July last week. He was arrested for a DUI. And did you hear what he told the police when they arrested him?
What's that?
He told them that he was the head of security. Former NFL cornerback Brandon Browner got arrested last week on 5 charges.
Oh
I
my
actually don't.
God.
I don't have them all in front of me, but I think arrest and burglary and
No.
theft. I think.
Well, the most egregious one would be the kidnapping charge.
Oh, okay. Was that one of them?
Yeah. He held his girlfriend against her will, and then So he's got robbery. He's got resisting arrest, kidnapping. He broke a restraining order. He beat the hell out of her.
Yeah.
I'm just for his sake. I'm just glad that this happened in L.A. and not in Louisiana, L.A. because he would be under the jail. Because no one in New Orleans likes him, and so there's that.
Yeah. Did you hear about what Jerry Jones is running in Dallas?
Did you hear that Jerry Jones thinks he could still play football? Did you hear about that?
I can't hear you.
I said, did you hear that Jerry Jones thinks he could still play football?
Oh, no, I didn't hear that. But I did hear that Jerry Jones is trying to implement the longest yard too. Cowboys cornerback Marquez White was arrested for aggravated assault and weapon charges. He has become the 3rd Dallas Cowboy to be arrested in less than 60 days, joining Terrence Williams and David Irving. The Dallas Inmates. They should change their name from the Dallas Cowboys to the Dallas Inmates. Unreal, man. I'm telling you. What does he do? Like any type of character interview at all when he signs these players or screens them before the draft? I just can't believe it. It's nice.
He doesn't care.
Stupid. More big news. This is probably actually the biggest news of the week. The LaShawn McCoy allegations. Did you hear about that?
I did.
Yeah, LaShawn McCoy or some girl or lady came out, Instagram, took a picture of her friend before and after, saying that LaShawn McCoy allegedly beat the crap out of her, basically. LaShawn McCoy came out just a couple after it was posted and saying that he has not had contact with these people for months. So we'll never actually know who's telling the truth. We probably never will. It could have happened. LaShawn McCoy probably could have done it, but it also wouldn't surprise me if a girl was out there just trying to get some money or something.
Yeah.
Keep quiet about this. So my last thing is Marcel Darius today. A woman from Texas came out today and said that Marcel Darius allegedly raped her while she was asleep. Like recently too, like a month or so.
This is so frustrating.
The news this week was just full of
the NFL's just getting really rapey, and I don't know how I feel about it.
A lot of knotheads, a lot of players.
Let me ask you,
past just doing a lot of stupid stuff.
Let me ask you about. Let me go back to that. Jameis Winston. Do you think the Bucs move on from Jameis now? He's you know what? He's entering a contract year. They can get out of it. They picked up the 5th-year option, but they can still get out of it. I mean, this has kind of become a pattern. He raped a woman in college.
Exactly. So that's exactly my feeling on it. I think I actually had a conversation. It was with another Vikings fan, I think, on Twitter, right after his suspension officially came out. But what has to happen here for the Buccaneers to set an example? I
mean, I get he was a number 1 overall pick.
He He has a history of this.
This is the
time
second
after time. This is not the first time that something like this has happened.
I mean, you don't just get accused of rape twice.
I just don't understand why they would keep him around. I would just cut him. It doesn't look like they're going to be very competitive going into the next season anyway, so they might as well just start looking for a QB in next year's draft.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't get accused of rape twice and not ever do it. So, very strange to me. All right, well, that is going to do it for us for this week's edition of the All Pro Nation podcast. Y'all be sure to stay tuned because we got that interview with Matt Collar coming up. Thank you again for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at 318 Chris Smith. You can follow him on Twitter at purple_post. And be sure that you are following us on Twitter and Facebook at All Pro Nation. Check us out at allpronation.com where fans have a voice. If you're interested in joining the All Pro Nation team as we get ready to head into the football season, please reach out to us. We are looking for contributors both on the website to write articles and those wanting to have their own podcast right here on the All Pro Nation Radio Network. Also, if you really love the podcast, be sure to go and give us a 5-star review. Tell everybody how much you love the podcast. And most importantly, if you super duper love us, you can share it with your friends. And if you really love us, you can also go to allpronation.com and you can leave us a little donation and tell everybody that you love us. So I'm Chris, he's Tanner, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much and have a great night. All right, and what is good? What is up, All Pro Nation family? We are continuing our breakdown of the NFL, and tonight we are going with the NFC East, or NFC North, I apologize, and we are joined by the one, the only Matthew Collar. Matthew, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, yeah, I'm doing good. Matt, why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners where they can find you at on the internet?
Well, our website, 1500 ESPN, is a good place to start. And also I do the Purple Podcast.
Okay, right on. And and you're on the Twitterverse?
Yes, at Matthew Collar is my Twitter.
All right, cool. So y'all go check out Matthew. And we're going to jump right on in, man. So we didn't get a chance to really talk a whole lot before we started this recording. But, Matt, I have to break something to you, bud. You Vikings fans are some of my least favorite people right now. I'm born, raised down in Louisiana, and I bleed black and gold, and you guys broke my heart this year. So.
Well, yeah, I guess I wouldn't really put myself in that category since I cover the team, so it doesn't really matter to me one way or the other what happens, but if you're a Saints fan, that was quite a tough break for you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. So let's jump right on in. So we're breaking down the NFC North. Obviously, the Vikings won the North last year, and I'm just curious. Do you see the Vikings still being able to hold on to the NFC North going into the 2018 season?
Well, it's certainly possible when you're talking about a team that was number one defense in the NFL and probably got a little bit stronger by adding Sheldon Richardson. And then, at the quarterback position, they got a good play out of Case Keenum last year, but I think they probably improved talent-wise there and put Kirk Cousins into a great situation with two of the best wide receivers in the NFL and a running back that has superstar-level potential in Dalvin Cook. So if he's healthy and back to 100% and looks anything like he did in the first 4 weeks, then yeah, I mean, they're definitely a team that has a chance. But when you look at the NFC North, I see it as one of the most interesting divisions because of how strong it could end up being. I mean, Aaron Rodgers coming back certainly changes the game there. The fact that the Packers finally moved on from Don Capers and they went with Mike Pettin, so they've got a better defensive coordinator there. A more modern defense probably is going to be coming there from the Packers, and they draft a couple of cornerbacks. So I think it's probably those two teams first and second, but I could also see the Chicago Bears being really intriguing after they spent a lot of money in free agency to add weapons around Mitch Trubisky. They have a coaching change. Detroit has a coaching change. So, I mean, I think that, yeah, the Vikings and Packers are 1 and 2, and you can make a good case for either, but you know, I wouldn't count out the other two teams as maybe making some noise too.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think the NFC North is going to be one of the most intriguing divisions this year because, like you said, the Vikings, stellar defense, probably only got better. You can never count Aaron Rodgers out. I really like what they're doing up in Chicago. I think they're very quietly putting a good team together there. And then of course Detroit, Matthew Stafford. You know, if he ends up having a good year, that could be a really tough division for sure.
Yeah, I think with Detroit especially, they're an interesting team because, you know, last year they scored a lot of points, but they couldn't stop anybody. And so they move on from Jim Caldwell, and now it's, you know, can they bring a little dash of the Patriot way over there, or is it going to kind of blow up as it has for many other ex-Patriots coaches, and how are they going to react to that style, and can they finally, you know, kind of get together a decent defense? Because really in the entire era of Matt Stafford as their quarterback, I can't remember one time where I felt like a team is playing the Lions, you better watch out for their defense. It just seems to have been a trend under Jim Caldwell that they were mediocre at best. So if they take even a step forward there, they could be dangerous too. And that's how I'm looking at it for sure, is with those two teams, with the Bears and Lions, is I just really don't have a great feel yet for what you're going to get there. But I could see both of them in their cities, in Detroit and Chicago, saying, yeah, we should be better this year.
Right. Matthew, let's talk about the $84 million man, Kirk Cousins. What do you expect from him in his first season as a Viking? Do you think that he has a good chance for this to be a career year for him, or do you think it'll be sort of similar to the seasons he had in Washington? He's had good seasons. You know, he's thrown for 4,000 yards year after year. Could he do it again?
Yeah, I definitely think he can, considering the weapons that he has. And I think that when the Vikings signed him, they probably looked closest at the 2016 season as opposed to last year. When you look at that Washington offense, I think that there's a little bit of a narrative that he didn't have a lot of support, but in 2016 especially, he did. I mean, with Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, they had a very good offensive line anchored by one of the best left tackles in the NFL, and he had a great season that year, and they were competitive, and maybe if they had a halfway decent defense, they would have been a much more dangerous team, and Vikings fans will remember Kirk Cousins and that Washington offense giving them a lot of problems when those two teams matched up in 2016 in D.C. But I also think that you saw last year some of the weaknesses in his game if things start to fall apart around him. So if you have one of your top receivers get hurt, or if the offensive line doesn't stay healthy, I don't think that Cousins is quite of the caliber of quarterback, and this would go for many good quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's not quite the caliber of a Drew Brees or an Aaron Rodgers that could just raise the play of everybody else around him. So, right. I mean, I think what it will largely depend on is just how healthy everyone stays and how this offensive line holds up. And that's probably going to be the biggest question, because at all the skill positions, they're either as good or better than what he had in 2016. And so even if he doesn't end up with the most unbelievable fantasy football season because they run the ball a lot, you could still see him having a great year because of the weapons that he has around him.
Yeah, and so kind of segueing into our next question, kind of talking about his weapons that he has. So obviously the Vikings have Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, two of the best wide receivers in the league right now. But they also have a wide receiver that came out that was really hot. A lot of people had a lot of expectations, and he's been pretty lethargic in his professional career, and that's Laquan Treadwell. What do you expect out of him this year? And is this a make or break year? Because if he doesn't produce yet again, do the Vikings just part ways with him?
Yeah, I do think it's a make or break year. Usually it takes something serious to happen in order for a team to part ways with a first round pick before they get to the end of their rookie deal, because it doesn't make a lot of sense on the salary cap. So they're going to be patient with him through this year, and probably next year, even if he's not great, he'll still be on the team. But as far as his career goes, Yeah, I look at it that way. I mean, after year one, he has one catch, and after year two, it was well short of spectacular. I mean, and of course, they're throwing toward Thielen, they're throwing toward Diggs much more often, but even when they did target Laquan Treadwell, Case Keenum and Sam Bradford had very little success in doing so, and he failed to separate from defensive backs when there were 50-50 balls for him to go up and get, which was supposed to be his thing. He didn't have a whole lot of success doing that either. So I think when you're looking for somebody to be that number 3 receiver on this team, you want somebody who does one thing specifically really well. So last year, Jarius Wright was really good at going over the middle on short routes, and they used him that way. And they signed Kendall Wright in the offseason, probably to fill in the slot in different situations. And where does Laquan Treadwell then fit in? So he's going to have to pretty much perform here in training camp better than Kendall Wright and show this new offensive coordinator, John DeFilippo, that he deserves a chance to be in the offense. But at this point, there hasn't been a whole lot to really be optimistic about. And, the fact that Mike Zimmer has called him out a couple times about running a wrong route in practice or not really learning to work out the right way, I don't think that any of that points toward his arrow being up right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an interesting year for Treadwell for sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. Were you in Buffalo before you came to Minneapolis?
I was, yes.
Okay. So you might not have a very large history of Vikings defenses, but on paper, this certainly seems like it possibly could be the most talented Vikings defense that we may have ever seen. How do you think they stack up compared to the other powerhouses in the NFL, like the Jacksonville defense and the Los Angeles defense?
Yeah, I think that they certainly have an argument for being the best defense in the NFL again. I mean, I think if you're number 1 the year before, then you deserve that credit going into this year. And the addition of Sheldon Richardson could have the potential to be huge. I mean, I thought Tom Johnson did a really good job in just doing what he was supposed to do last year and not messing it up for all the other great talents on the team. But you're talking about another guy that has Pro Bowl potential being added to the mix, and even a little more depth with Mike Hughes. And if they're completely healthy, it's hard to find any weakness on this team. I mean, especially when they have at every level on the defensive line, they've got 2 of the best players in the league. Linebackers, they're very solid. And then in the secondary, they've got one of the best corners and possibly the best safety in the NFL. It's really hard to make an argument against them. You could make an argument that, the Jaguars, the Rams, Eagles are on the same plane as them. And then, who ends up being number 1, who ends up being number 2 is harder to say. But the Rams have a great secondary. And then adding Ndamukong Suh and, the Eagles lose a couple guys, but then bring Michael Bennett in. And the Jaguars are as good as anybody. So I think that you'd be hard-pressed to find a weakness on the Vikings defense. The one thing that could hold them back from being at the very top, other than health, is probably just their schedule. I mean, when you look at all the quarterbacks that they're facing, I mean, Drew Brees and Tom Brady is mixed in there. And so on a week-to-week basis, they've got some really tough offenses that they're going to go against, and that alone could result in them, instead of being number 1, they're number 5. Now, I do think if it's anything less than that, then they're no longer a Super Bowl contender, because that's kind of their bread and butter and where this all starts. Cousins is supposed to be just good enough to win if everything else goes right. But if it doesn't, then I wouldn't look at him as a quarterback that can just put a team on his back and have a mediocre defense. I think he showed that in Washington, a mediocre defense, and couldn't win more than half of his games. So there is a lot of pressure on this defense to maintain it. And historically, it's tough to do, to keep a number 1 defense year after year. But I think they've already shown that they can do that since Mike Zimmer got here. The first year, it was just okay. But then since then, I think they've been 5th, 6th, and 1st in points against. So I think as we go along, and maybe Zimmer will make some more adjustments this year based on what happened in the NFC Championship game, that it's hard to make an argument that they wouldn't be up in that top.
Right. I think my biggest concern right now is probably depth. I don't know. I think every star on the Vikings defense last year played almost every single game. I don't know if they can do that 2 years in a row. So we'll see what happens going forward. Right now, I'd kind of like to take a look at the rookies within the division. The NFC North drafted well again this year. The Bears had a solid draft. Green Bay did better with their new general manager. And, of course, Rick Spielman did well. too. So when you're looking across the NFC North, which offensive rookie do you think has the best chance to, stand out this year?
Well, there was a guy that I liked for the Vikings as a potential fit, which was Anthony Miller, and he ends up going to the Chicago Bears. And it's a bit of a stacked room now in Chicago. It goes from a barren wasteland to now there's a lot of talent there with Trey Burton being signed and Allen Robinson too. But Anthony Miller was a guy that put up just massive numbers at Memphis, and when you watched him in college, he was a guy that could run a lot of different routes, had a great natural feel for route running, which I think as we've gone along here, it really stands out in the NFL. The great route runners are the guys who end up being the best receivers, right? We see that with Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. It's not just about having great hands or being fast, because everybody's fast. It's about how detailed you are with the route running. So when I look at Anthony Miller, as the type of guy who might project really well, even though he wasn't a top pick. So he's the most interesting to me. And then plus just with, Matt Nagy and maybe an Andy Reid flavor to their offense, it could look completely different from anything we saw before, especially with, John Fox being their head coach. So, I think they've really upgraded there, and he could be a part of it.
Yeah. Let's flip to the opposite end of the spectrum there. The defense actually throughout the NFC North looks like it's a lot more loaded for rookies than the offensive end. Who do you think stands out on defense?
Well, Jair Alexander was a guy that I thought the Vikings might target. And the fact that not only he ends up in Green Bay, but Josh Jackson too, both of those guys, I feel like it's a little bit of a response in a way by the Packers to Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. There are other talents in the NFC North. Detroit has a very good receiving core. Marvin Jones is one of the most underrated, I think, in the entire league. So I look at that as everyone has to have good defensive backs in the NFC North. But considering that Diggs and Thielen are so good and have the potential to burn you at any time, I didn't think it was a huge shock that they went with two corners. And Alexander, to me, has the potential to be one of the better shutdown corners, that he's a physical, aggressive type of corner. And you never know with how first-round picks are going to turn out. Some guys are boom, some guys are busts. But he's one that I'm going to be watching really closely, because he was a guy that I thought might have even been drafted higher because of his potential. And so, obviously, like someone like Mike Hughes is intriguing, but I don't think he's going to play a whole lot. So in Green Bay, I think that those two guys are both going to be thrown into the fire.
Yeah. Jair Alexander definitely has the potential to be a terrific rookie in his first year. He's got that swagger, kind of that Jalen Ramsey swagger that a lot of people look for and they like a lot. So let's look in depth at some of the players within the NFC North. I want to ask you who you think might be a breakout player for each team within the division. We'll start with the Chicago Bears.
Well, the Chicago Bears, I think Trey Burton is probably the most obvious name there, because he's a guy that didn't have a huge role last year, but when he did play, he was very good, and he's one of those mismatch type of tight ends that I know that the Vikings were interested in, because they don't really have that mismatch tight end, and the Bears landing him, it just gives them a whole nother dimension of a guy who can go deep routes, and he's not ever going to be the best blocker out there, but he has the potential to go from just a role player on the Super Bowl winning team to, I think he could even be a star in that offense, especially with his ability to run after the catch. He's got quickness. So I was really high on the Vikings looking into him, that I thought that was a great idea and would add a whole another layer to their offense. So him ending up there, I would definitely pick him.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how the Bears implement him into the offense with all those targets. You got Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel's there now. They're stacked at wide receiver. Let's go up to Detroit Lions.
Is it weird to pick an offensive lineman as a breakout player? Because
no, absolutely not.
I thought that Frank Ragnow was an absolute beast in college and handled SEC competition, was a monster. I know that Pro Football Focus had him as, I think, maybe their highest graded lineman in the entire draft, or at least for centers. And just going back and watching some of him, I think the guy's a beast. I mean, his size combination with speed and athleticism and nastiness. He was another guy that we talked about a lot because he's a Minnesotan, for the Vikings to potentially draft him. And, that offensive line for Detroit, they have put a lot of work into that thing, signing Rick Wagner and, they just improved. Yeah, TJ Lang, right? They've improved that so much over the last couple of years. And again, it feels like a response to what the Vikings have done on the defensive line and how talented they are there. So Ragnow is a guy, especially because I know that the Vikings were really interested in potentially drafting him. He's a guy that I'm going to keep a close eye on.
Absolutely. Green Bay. Who you got in Green Bay?
Green Bay's tough because I feel like it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same answer. It's kind of Jair Alexander is an interesting. Or are we just doing offense? Are we doing offense and defense?
You can do any player on the team. Doesn't matter if it's a rookie or whatever. Yep.
I feel like it's still him, but at the same time, who's going to break out for them on the offensive side? Because now they don't have Jordy Nelson for Aaron Rodgers. And I noticed that their running back there, Aaron Jones, gets suspended for a couple of games, and he probably would have been my pick because he showed some serious explosiveness last year in the couple of games that he played. But now I'm kind of wondering, like, is it going to be Jimmy Graham kind of getting back some of what he may have lost over the last couple of years? I think that they're probably the hardest to pick one, but I think I would probably have to go back and say Jair Alexander because the defense is going to be such a focus for the Packers. I think it's really cost them over the years, and it's kind of mind-blowing that Aaron Rodgers has won Super Bowl, and he's been the best quarterback for a pretty long time now. And a lot of that goes on the defense. There have been years where he's been fantastic, and he's just been let down. So, I guess when Aaron Jones comes back, it's probably him on the offensive side, and then Jair on the defensive side.
Right. Yeah, I know it's Devontae Adams and Randall Cobb are the 1 and 2 established wide receivers in Green Bay, but even in training camp, I'm really excited to see who kind of steps up and takes that 3rd and 4th spot because they drafted 3 wide receivers this year. They got Jamon Moore, Equanimus St. Brown, and then Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They drafted him too. So I know that Packers fans are also very high on Michael Clark. That's a guy, undrafted player that they called up to the 53-man roster last year. I know they're really excited about him. So it'll be interesting to see who steps up for Aaron Rodgers.
I also wonder if Muhammad Wilkerson ends up looking like Muhammad Wilkerson again. I mean, because just, it's him and Sheldon Richardson with the same sort of thing as those two guys were just such beasts and then sort of fell off the table from a team that was really struggling. But if he is back to what he was a couple of years ago, then the interior of their defensive line is one of the best in the league with Mike Daniels, right?
Easily.
So
yeah, Mike Daniels. Kenny Clark was terrific last year as well, too. So they could have an extremely good run defense this year if Muhammad Wilkerson plays up to his potential, like you said. Let's move over to Minnesota. Who you got? One guy. If you had to pick one guy on the team right now, who do you think is going to be the standout player this year, the Adam Thielen breakout guy?
Yeah, that's really tough because everybody is so established on this team.
Yep.
All right. And so maybe it's a little bit against the rules since this guy is already considered to be very good, but I think I have to go with Dalvin Cook. I mean, he only played 3.5 games before he got hurt last year. But, I mean, I go back a little farther with him into training camp where he was going against 2 established NFL players, and he went right by them to number 1 very quickly and showed his true level of talent was even higher than someone like Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray, who are both very good. So with him, if he's playing 16 games, I think he can be one of the best running backs in the entire league, that he has that type of potential. He's the type that you would draft number 1 on your fantasy draft because he's going to catch 50 or 60 passes and he's going to run for 1,000 yards. And the offense might really start there because they have an offensive line that's built for running outside zones and screen passes and things like that. They have mobility on the interior of their offensive line, and I think they want to take advantage of that, and that starts with Dalvin Cook. So I think that he qualifies because he hasn't really played that many games as a guy that could sort of reestablish himself after saying hello to the world last year and then quickly getting hurt, but reestablish himself as one of the better runners in the league.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if he can stay healthy for 16 games, it's scary to see what he's going to be able to do this year. I'm excited.
Yeah, right on. So, all right, so let me ask you, Matt, we're not going to hold you to this, but pre-training camp outlook, after now that we've gone through the draft, free agency, and we're getting ready to hit training camp, if you had to pick today, how do you kind of see this division shaping up by the end of the year?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is really hard to pick now because you don't know who's going to get hurt and things like that. I never would have thought that the Packers would finish where they did, but I also didn't think Anthony Barr would drive Aaron Rodgers into the ground either and hurt him for the whole season. So, but I think right now it's even with the Packers and the Vikings. I think the Vikings still have the overall stronger roster, but Aaron Rodgers evens that out. And so I think both of those teams, you could see them going 11-5, 10-6, or even 12-4. I mean, you could see them both being that good. And then for the other two, I think as of right now, I'm putting the Bears right behind them, maybe at like a 9-7. And I still think that the Lions are probably like an 8-8 team. And part of it is just because of who they have to play, that I think those other teams can beat them. The Vikings and Packers could potentially beat them twice, and Chicago should be able to get one against them. And so that's tough when your division is so difficult. If you put them in like the AFC North or something, they would run over it. But here it's going to be hard. So I guess that's how I have it right now. I think the Bears surprise some people and they break out, but probably still end up behind the Packers and Vikings there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would kind of tend to agree with that too. And like I said, I think that division is going to be one of the better divisions to watch this year in football for sure. I fully expect two, and maybe like the NFC South of last year, 3 teams could possibly come out of that division into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I mean, even when you go up and down the entire NFC, it's really hard to figure out like who's even going to be the weak link. I mean, maybe Arizona struggles, possibly Tampa Bay because Jameis Winston is suspended and they've got to start with Ryan Fitzpatrick. But even they made some improvements on defense, drafting Vita Vea and bringing in Bo Allen there. And so, you can make an argument. Almost every NFC team is going into training camp with their media writing, they should contend this year. Almost every single one. Right. And I don't remember a time where that happened, where an entire conference you could say pretty much, I don't know who the bad team is going to be. I mean, with the AFC, you could pick out 2 or 3 of them with no problem in your sleep. But the NFC, I don't know. And that's what makes this an interesting situation for the Vikings. They're in win now mode. They spent the $84 million on their quarterback, and it just so happens that they've maybe dropped into or been hot and built up to a time where the NFC is as difficult as it's ever been. So that's what makes it a really interesting season in the NFC.
It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be super fun. So I'm just ready for football season to get here. So, well, Matt, we sure do appreciate you joining us tonight. One more time before we head out, remind everybody where they can find you at and interact with you.
Sure. My work is at 1500ESPN.com. I am the host of the Purple Podcast and on Twitter at Matthew Collar.
All right. Well, Matt, we sure do appreciate you, man. We hope you'll come back and join us another time.
All right.
Thanks,
anytime.
Matthew.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good night.